Y'all, I have tried this video like 5 fucking times, and then I spent an hour getting the fucking microphone out of the goddamn bag, set up everything, then to realize that I didn't tap the actual record button on the device that allows the microphone to connect to the computer, but it still didn't work. I'm all teched out, and honestly, if I don't just flesh out my thoughts, I'm really just gonna say fuck it and not really give a fuck. So let me just get into the topics at hand. I tried live streaming, Lord knows I did. It just wasn't happening for me. So, as you can see, the topic of discussion is Murad Merali, Black Culture Vulture, and S&M, meaning sex and master, a kink, a particular sexual fetish, or colonial trauma. And yes, we will be talking about colonialism. And then finally, rent control, my take. And I have a lot of thoughts on that. So it's going to be a mismatch, a mixed bag, a kerfuffle, um, a hodgepodge of topics. But let's get into it. So I first discovered the whole hoopla about Murad on Twitter because Twitter is apparently where I live now. I apparently got an address on Twitter because that's just what I do now. And it's just easier to flesh out my thoughts on things because I have a lot of thoughts on different things. Like if you've been a long time subscriber to this channel, you know that I have started and I have entered into different topics, and I've always talked about a multitude of things, whether it's spirituality, whether it's politics, whether it's black women empowerment, whether it's psychology. Like, I got a lot of motherfucking thoughts. As I was saying, I first discovered the topic about Murad Merali or Murad Merali, something like that. I first discovered this on Twitter because there was commentary on the timeline about something that he did, and it was phrased the tweet in some racial insensitivity, and honestly, it was just a ticking time bomb in my opinion. And it's like that with a lot of people of color, non-blacks, or even just white folks who just get real comfortable and then they come out the mouth and they say something very racially insensitive, or very racially flippant, or like a mask off moment, right? Kind of like when Kim was like, nobody wants to fucking work anymore, as if we were all born from a silver spoon. Like we all had a socialite mom, and we all had the famous rich lawyer father, and we're all raised in Beverly Hills, and we all sucked the right dick for the right clout and made money off it. Like we were all living that Kim Kardashian highway to social economic success or exploitation, depending on how you see it. But nonetheless, back to the topic, I wasn't surprised. And then I just made my 2 cents like, y'all really be out here celebrating these folks because they can do a cute little black scent, because they know all the cool, hip, black lingo. Y'all get real hyped for that. And then they show their ass, and then you get real mad about that. I'm just like, it's just another Tuesday. This happens, wash, rinse, and repeat. And then a couple of people on the timeline who are of Muslim um, faith, or they are from Middle Eastern background, Arab background. They were like, anti-blackness is a thing. So it's like, okay, leftists, stand up, correct what is wrong. And then, ironically, because the feds be watching, Google be keeping tabs on the metadata and what you connect with, what you engage with, if you clicked on it, if you had the 2 cents on it, because out of coinkydink, I'm on YouTube and I get recommended a video on the same topic. Now, there was a time where I was into gossip blogs. I was into the girls giving out the tea and who did what with whom and yada yada yada. But it's been about like 2 years since I've been into like the tea thing, and I don't keep up like that because I don't have the mental space for it. Also, like there's just real shit going on in life, like inflation, for me to be worried about what rich people doing to do more shit, to get more endorsements, to get more clicks, to get more money. It's all a theater. It's all performance. So it recommended it recommended me the YouTuber Mayowa's World. I hope I said that right. video discussing allies and how non-black people, but also non-white, use black culture or proximity to aspects of black expression to cultivate their brand and to monetize their capitalistic incentives. That's not the title of the video, but in jest, to encapsulate it all, to wrap that thing up, that's basically what she was saying. And I agree with a lot of her points that she made. And I want to talk about some of those points. Now, when it came to the whole Murad situation, what has been said out in these YouTube streets was before he was into blogging and letting the black girls know what's hot and what's not and what's going on and what's breaking, what's trending, was that he had an OnlyFans and that he was into race play porn. Well, not porn per se, but he was into race plays. So this is like racial epithets and racial slurs and domination and aspects of that submissive and domination type of kink. And in particular, he was into footwork. So instead of using other body parts, he was using his feet. And he was using certain slurs such as monkey, referring to black people as monkey. And of course, he was embodying the position within this kink, this race play, as the master. And I guess whomever is paying him for that would be the slave. And since he's throwing out monkeys and racial slurs, I'm assuming the slave is indeed black. So, this is, to me, nothing different than blackfishing. Like, what white girls do, like Tay Money, Lil Tay, Iggy Azalea, the Cash Me Outside Girl, etc., are all able to monetize their blackly black cosplaying and be celebrated while doing so in ways that black women would be labeled ghetto and uncivilized. If a little black girl, Shaniqua, was on Dr. Phil's couch talking about Catch Me Outside, how about that? She would be all types of hood rats. She's all types of ghettos, all types of, oh, she's just gonna have 50 babies in these streets. Like, all types of stereotypes would be thrown at her. She's not gonna get no goddamn free diss track, whatever that was that went viral where they were remixing Catch Me Outside. They're not gonna do that for no black girl. They're not going to give her endorsements. They're not gonna give her no record deal. They're not gonna brand her. They're not gonna give her a makeup line. That's not what happens to black girls who act up. Black girls who act up go to juvie. Black girls who act up go to jail. Okay. They don't get a high cruising success into fame and the limelight. That's not what typically happens to black girls. And y'all know this. Y'all know this. That's the pizzazz of the white girl who quote unquote acts black. It's nothing like, oh, she acts like Rosa Parks. It's nothing like, oh, she acts like Idia B. Wells. It's always that, oh, she acts like a ratchet black girl, but plot twist, she's white. Da, da, da. Like, that's always it. Even Mimi from Love and Hip Hop, like, yeah, she was Asian, but that was her whole shtick. I'm Asian, but I talk like this, and I got long nails, and I suck black dick, and I have biracial kids, and I'm gonna act like I get all like, yeah, that's the pizzazz, that's the talent, that's the je ne sais quoi, that's the secret recipe. No different from Aquafina, who turned into Nora from Queens. It's cosplaying. It's theater. It's insulting, to be honest with you. It's very much like modern day blackface, to be honest with you. And it's tired, but it's nothing new. How black culture isn't gatekept. And when there are black excellent gatekeepers like the Diddy's, the Dr. Dre's, the Jay-Z's, you know, the old heads. They're quick to put non-blacks onto black culture like a hustle, like it's a quick flip, like it's an Airbnb petite bourgeoisie flip, right? Whenever it comes to black culture, they always got them an exotical, something in between black but not really black, maybe like a dash of black, like Cassie, who's not black, but she was able to catapult her career starting in black spaces by having black producers like What was that dude who was crying over her coochie before Earth Gotti was crying over Shanti's coochie publicly? But she was working with Ryan Leslie, a black producer. Then she got swept up by Diddy, and they curated this R&B black adjacent vibe and brand for Cassie. And in actuality, she grew up from a well-to-do, upper middle class Connecticut neighborhood. And she herself, her lineage, her family, her, I guess, racial category is not black. She's Filipino, a couple of different ethnicities in the Caucasian persuasion, and that's pretty much it. But the way she was branded, it gave you black-ish, black-esque. Same thing you could say about Justin Bieber. Getting co-signed by Usher, and him being featured with black rappers, being featured with Lil Wayne. Then he was featured with some other Lil Twist and all these other rappers, giving him that black pass, giving him that cool vibe, allowing him to not be just seen as this white popish bubblegum artist, but also the ability to quote unquote cross over. Dr. Dre co-signed Eminem even after rapping his racist moon cricket, and that is a derogatory term referencing black people as critters, not human beings, but actual rodents and insects, rap song leaked. Russell Simmons defended Eminem and said he forgave Eminem as if he's the black delegate, as if he is the supreme blackness of blackly black, as if Russell Simmons says some shit and all black people gonna be like, I concur. As if he's the black spokesperson. Russell Hustle Simmons, Black Rush Card Simmons, the one who allegedly had to run to Indonesia because he had them Epstein charges on him. And got with, what's her name? Half Asian, half black, Blasian. It's got with, what's her face? The big fat girl, Kimora, when she was not of age. But, okay, that Russell Simmons, he was out here forgiving Eminem for the entire black population. How many millions, billions black people are on this planet? For Eminem's racist song. All to make money off of that whole white rapper shtick. So before the Catch Me Outsides, before the Iggy Azaleas, there was the Eminem. And they curated his whole image. Quiet as it's kept. Word on the curb. Eminem was not that poor growing up. he was not that, despair, cracked out, living in a trailer. Word on the curb is he embellished a lot. But again, it was the prize. White rapper. When is there going to be a white great hope? When is going to be the white Tupac? Because that was the shtick. And it still is. That's why y'all are always this invested in these non-black people dibbling and dabbling into black conversations, black spaces, black culture. And then once you see it's for a quick flip, y'all be in your feelings. Quiet as it's kept. Cardi's still playing into that whole sister girl thing because it works for her. But if it didn't work for her, you think at 30 plus years old, she would still be living that whole ghetto-esque persona in a traditional conservative Dominican household? Try again. Black online spaces is basically carried by black women or the harassment of black women. For example, black men in drag and cosplaying black women, stereotypical ghetto mannerisms, and a tacky ass wig saying slick slapstick jokes. Y'all know that all over Vine when Vine was a thing, all over Instagram. These dudes with these tired, raggedy, Party City, plastic ass wigs with their raggedy ass outfits. Some of them don't even come up with an outfit. They just take a bedroom sheet off their beds and wrap it around them and they get to their best black mama stereotype. So that's black women depiction online. It's either that caricature or it's coming off of black women's image. It's the black fishing. It's the black proximity. Like, I'm not black, but I hang out with black people. I'm not black, but I use Ebonics, AAVE, African American Vernacular English. I'm not black, but I fuck black dudes and I have biracial kids. It's that type of vibe, right?
Y'all know there is a saying amongst white women that goes,
I am black by penetration. I am black via penetration. Read between the lines what that means. And it is an old term. Black by penetration. This is what you're seeing, different versions of I am black by association. I am black by approximation. I am black by penetration. I am black because I live in a black community, because I eat fried chicken. That is black. Not your actual black ass experience, not your actual black ass skin, not your actual black ass social class position. No. It's like partially on top. It's the exterior, not your humanness, your commodification.
Black people are easily impressed when non-black people do things deemed quote unquote black or are involved in popular black culture, i.e. gossip, i.e. reality TV type of culture, that online space, that blogger space, that celebrity gossip thing, right? It's easy for black culture to be appropriated because there's no checks and balances, and the smallest gesture, like a white woman wearing braids or a black man dating a white woman, y'all went crazy, y'all went ape shit when you found out that Lil Brown was dating a white woman. And to me, it's like, well, duh. Why Black Woman Vibes? Why, duh? Well, he is a rich, young black boy surrounded by rich white people. He doesn't know what it's like to eat government cheese. He doesn't know what it's like to grow up in the projects. His proximity, his quality of life, his lived experience is that space. He has the same lived experience as what I referenced earlier within this video, the Kim Kardashian complex. He lives in a bubble. He lives in luxury. He lives in austerity. There's not too many black people who have that experience. And truth be told, not too many black people who have that experience are not athletes, are not celebrities, are not public figures. Meaning, a lot of these black excellences get into those millionaire, billionaire spaces by being entertainers, by being mascots to capitalism. So this idea Lil Brown was going to be woke or woke, I'm like, how? Because every time LeBron James says something to defend black people, he pussy pops and he declines and he walks his shit back. When he was out here wearing I Can't Breathe after Eric Garner was choked to death, them white folks told him shut up and dribble, and this 6'75" nigga was just like, okay, well, I guess I'll just shut up and dribble. I'm like, let me find out you tall for nothing. Let me find out that you really scary in real life. Let me find out that you a fucking goofy. Let me find out you one of them niggas who don't look at white people in the motherfucking eye. Let me find out if you one of them black people, when white people come around, you start whispering and mumbling and yes, it must. Let me fucking find out you a tall for nothing ass nigga. Let me fucking find out. Just like when he was out here trying to support Brittany, what's her last name? Brittany Griner? Who is captured by Russia in this geopolitical NATO, Russia, Ukraine bullshit, empire against empire. LeBron James was like, look, that's fucked up. If I was Brittany Griner, I don't think a Brittany writer, Brittany, you know Brittany. Brittany says Brittany, goddamn Brittany. If I was Brittany, I don't even know if I want to come back to this country because damn, y'all left me hanging. Like, you didn't even come for me. Like, you didn't rush it, like, fuck around with me. Like, what up? And the media, once again, the white folks came after his ass and he, well, our eyes are sorry now. Our eyes didn't need to. And I'm just like, damn, nigga, really? That money's so good, you got your ass out. You that scared to stand on your principles like a man. To have character like a man. Like, wow. So if that is his role model for Lil Bron, if his role model is his daddy who keeps two-stepping every time a white person gets red, a white person hyperventilates, then what did you think of Lil Bron? Like, where's the Marcus Garvey in that? Who was going to teach him that? And how was he going to enact that in that white plush luxury space. And why would he care? Like his experience is no different than Carlton Banks from, I'm trying to build connectivities to get you to understand his lived experience and how it's different. It's class consciousness and he doesn't have it. He's on par with Carlton Banks from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air in the sense of like, he's inundated with wealth. So where was he going to find him a black girl in those spaces if they exist? And black like me black, like black mom, black daddy. Not black like Saweetie, where one parent is not actually black. Not black like Doja, when one parent is actually not black. Like black. Like two parent black. Hell, dark skin black. What's the likelihood of that existing in his space? And what is it, reality, and the likelihood of that existing in his space with class consciousness and with racial pride? Yeah, y'all played yourselves. And y'all like to get mad just to get mad. That fake outrage shit, I guess that's what y'all do instead of actually like orgasming. Because people ain't fucking like they used to, because capitalism makes it hard to like fuck when you're always on the clock. Because rent is due on the 1st. Ain't that right? So, where was I? Yes, it's easy for black culture to be appropriated because there's no checks and balances, and the smallest gestures like a white woman wearing braids or a black man dating a white woman or a non-black person saying Black Lives Matter easily impresses and wins black people's loyalty. It doesn't take much. It doesn't take much for black people to be like, they are allied, they are friends. We vote like literally. It does. It's lip service. It's just lip service. It's literally, I see a black person, I recognize them in the room, and every black person in that room is all of a sudden saying racism don't exist no more. It's literally lip service, and we've been quote unquote coasting on lip service, even though every couple of days we see a black person get murdered on camera. It's ritualistic. It's just ritualistic. You know how people, when they talk about the Mayans and how they used to do human sacrifices, like, oh my God, it's so barbaric. How could they? But like every other day, a black person's being murdered on camera. So like, what is the difference? It's a police state, like, in a racist one at that, in a capitalistic, rooted greed in that, like, who, what are we doing here? So, because it's so easy to impress black people just by saying we recognize black people exist, we recognize inequities exist, we recognize racism exists, like just saying that is good enough. And because it takes so little to impress black people, anybody coasts through the gate, and by the time black people realize it's a wolf, black people done got in their ass ate, and not in the way that most people would enjoy. And because of that, because black people not expecting consistency, not expecting a record of holding the line, putting their benefits and risking their proximity, risking their reputation, risking the benefits that come with, let's say, their class, let's say their racial hierarchy, because there's a hierarchy to whiteness too. I found out that the Jews ain't being persecuted, but the Jews ain't on the highest on the hierarchy. There's the Anglo-Saxons, there's the Protestants, like there's a whole hierarchy to whiteness too. So don't let that shit fool you either. It's a snake eating its tail. It's nonsense, but it's nonsense to keep the rich rich and the poor poor. But nonetheless, back to the topic. We don't ask consistency. We don't ask reciprocity. We don't ask what is your record. We just are flabbergasted and we are just doting and we are just in ooh and ahs just because a non-black person, in particular a white person, says they see a black person and they quote unquote understand. I hear you, and that is enough. And it certainly is not. Non-blacks use ally as a badge of honor, like it's a badge, like they get a tax deductible, like it's a sticker to add onto their sticker collection. Allyship isn't given, it's earned, and one cannot bestow the title ally onto oneself. it's a colonizer approach to allyship. It shows the disingenuous nature of the supposed ally in the terminology of using ally to loosely benefit and to be used by said ally. And I was like, what? Essentially, if I bestow allyship onto myself without doing any of the work, then not only am I watering down the word allyship, but I never was an ally to begin with. I wanted to commodify the term to give myself an ego boost. But I never was in it to win it. There was no skin in the game because I never had to, let's say, check a racist person because I'm in allyship with my black comrade. If you're still one of those people where it's like, well, people are people and, old age and, they may not mean it, then how are you an ally? You saying that bullshit to me does not change the fact that this person was still racially insensitive, that this person is going to continue to be racist, going to continue being biased, and their actions, especially if they are in a position of power, will harm someone of color, in particular black, because of their biases. Meaning, if this racist is a manager, they're going to find a way to screw over their black subordinates because of their racism. If you know that and you tell me, well, they're old and that was back then and they don't mean it, you telling me that bullshit is the equivalent of you not saying shit. Because why? This motherfucker still is in a position of power and they're going to continue exercising their racism. So you didn't change shit, quote unquote ally. You just soft shoot it and technically rationalized it, which does not make you an ally. It makes you an enemy. Wolf in sheep's clothing, people. Now, let's move on to this S&M. I know y'all probably first heard of it when Rihanna dropped that song, S&M, when she was on her red hair days and she was wilding, cussing people out and showing out her coochie and doing weird threesomes and menages and lesbianisms and whatever she wanted to, because that's her business. She grown. But we're not talking about Rihanna. We are talking about S&M in the sense of dominatrix, in the sense of kink, in the sense of sexual, some might say deviancy, but it's not necessarily a moral plea per se, but more so peeling back the layers of where this kink started from, where it originates from, and why it's toxic and harmful. Not only to the storyline that is Murad Merali. He got everybody's storyline right, but now he is the storyline. Legag. S&M is a collective trauma masquerading as a kink. Like most unconscious behaviors we perform, S&M, literally slave and master kink, stems from colonialism, racism, white supremacy. And before you roll your eyes and huff and puff, I thought about it, so hear me out. And then huff and puff in reflection, because I know what I be talking. Outside of the literal name of the kink, S for slave,
Also sadist.
M for master,
Also masochist.
like chattel slavery, colonialists actually turned natives, the natives that they went to. So when they went to when they went to Korea, the natives were Korean. When they went to China, the natives were Chinese. When they went to Algeria, the natives were Algerian, and so on and so forth. The natives. Colonialists actually turned natives, especially native women and children, into prostitutes. Before colonialism, brothels and sex work did not exist in native lands. The commodifying of women's bodies did not exist. The concept of money wasn't used in the way Europeans used money, and coercion or exploitation wasn't an acceptable practice. So women and children didn't need to sell their bodies, nor were they trafficked into sex slavery until colonialism. Essentially, before the introduction of money, and that's not to say Europeans were the only people who created money. Like, there were other systems of bargaining and trading and some type of commerce and some type of exchange value. All systems had that. What I'm saying is that it wasn't so hell bent where it's like you have to have this amount of money for the trade-off of this good or this service. And if not, me as a person who has the goods that you want to buy, I get to coerce you, or I get to demand upon you, or I get to press you in other forms of payment. So you don't have the trade-in value, you don't have the money. If you want the service or the goods that I have, I, in those native societies, did not think or would think, well, what that mouth do? Well, pop that pussy for a real nigga. Like that's not a concept before the introduction of colonialism. Because commodifying bodies wasn't a thing. Sleeping with kids wasn't a thing. Prince Andrews. It's not a practice in native lands until the introduction of colonialism, which turned natives into brothels. And it wasn't one of those things where it's like, you could be free and wild and heathens, or accept this Jesus Bible thing and pop that pussy for a real colonialist. Like, it was one of those things, beat, raped, stolen, literally stolen. It wasn't optional. That was the point. It was never optional. It was always under the threat of terror. To obscure this reality reinforces sexist and chauvinistic stereotypes of women as nymphomaniacs, or having a natural craving for drinking cum or vaginal penetration. In fact, if anything, it would be men. How many some odd seconds a day do men think of sex? How many some odd minutes a day men have an erection? I promise you, as a woman, women are not climaxing daily. Also, this flawed belief that women, quote unquote, just gotta have it, keeps anti-LGBTQ, specifically anti-lesbian rhetoric alive, because if sex work is natural to women, then being a lesbian is just a phase, or lesbians haven't found the right dick, because what can two vaginas do better than heterosexuality? Cis lesbians don't have penises, so they can't satisfy women, and thus lesbians just need the right dick. Obviously, this is a slippery slope of misogyny that parallels this idea, this concept, this coercion, this exploitation that is known as sex work. We're no longer saying prostitution because that word is scummy, it's dirty, no one likes it, you can't reform it. So now we're going to call it a cute word, a euphemism, sex work. Yeah. Women don't desire to be sexual workers. Women don't desire to be sex workers. They are turned into sex workers for economic survival. Shows like P-Valley depict that reality of sex workers clearly for the sexist, chauvinistic, capitalistic, ageist, ableist, and economically predatory the nature of sex work actually is. It's as if sex work was created literally for the male gaze. And that's sarcasm, because sex work was literally and still is created for the male gaze. Voila, sex tourism. Former Japan Prime Minister Abe Shinzo, hope I said that right as well, but he was a dirtbag, so I don't hope that well, got murked because he came from a war criminal family who fought in World War II. And during World War II, Abe's family, the men in his family, so his great-grandfather or his grandfather, was using women in China, Korea, Philippines, and other Asian countries who were victims of the war, World War II, as comfort women, essentially sex slaves. After World War II, Japanese soldiers who participated in the selling and enslavement of these Asian women during the war denied there were comfort women, and denied even participating in the selling and buying of these comfort women. Over 200,000 Asian women were kept as comfort women for military men. And it wasn't just Japanese men, military men, men of multiple militaries. Jeffrey, you know how many militaries were involved in World War II? And so to this day, where there is a military base, there is prostitution. Literally. Not just in America, but globally. Where there is a military base, there is a brothel. There is prostitutes. There are sex workers. Like, why do you think that is? Jeffrey Epstein and Maxwell Gleason were sex traffickers and buyers like R. Kelly and all the other traffickers in high places. Jeffrey Epstein's flights weren't empty. S&M is sexually enticing to people who get off on power trips and power imbalances, basically domination. Whether a poor woman and a predatory boss, whether a grown man and an underage girl, whether women enslaved during war and soldiers, etc., the outcome is still the same. The person with the most power ravages the other person who is helpless and under duress. Whippings and other tools in this S&M kink performance are tools from colonialism, from slave masters' literal whip to degrading verbal harassment to sexual domination. The master gets turned on by the pain and traumatic duress of the slave, like a literal plantation, meaning the dominatrix, the master, the person who is giving and distributing the pain, they themselves get off on the slave, yelling, bleeding, all this reaction to being physically harmed. The master gets off on that. The same thing as literal plantation slavery, the mutilation of Black bodies, the terror of Black bodies, the killing of Black bodies, the torture of Black bodies, the screams and the total dehumanization of Black bodies. That's what got colonialists, slave owners, slave masters off. And the same way this kink, the master, the dominator, gets off on the slave performer. They're not separate ideas. They're not separate expressions. They all stem from the same evilness that is imperialism, that is capitalism, that is patriarchy, that is white supremacy. S&M isn't a kink for people of color. It's mockery and a fetish for white upper class women, primarily, in particular in the role as slave. But in general, white upper class people engage in this S&M performance. White men in particular, still in this performance and in social hierarchy, are at the top, embodying and performing that master, that sadist aspect. To commodify and sanitize oppression and sexual domination, i.e., rape. Their class placement and privilege buffers them from the real predatory reality of rape and sexual coercion. Not to say rich women don't get raped. It's to say rich women won't have to work a minimum wage job and blow her supervisor for overtime hours like a poor woman more likely will find herself in comparison to a rich woman whose job is to be a trophy. Meaning, I'm not saying never in history has a rich woman ever been sexually violated. That is a lie. What I am saying is the likelihood of that happening to a rich woman is significantly less than a poor woman who oftentimes has to sacrifice a lot of things just to make ends meet. Meaning, if she's a single mother, meaning if she has quote unquote low skills, she's a low skill worker, meaning she has, let's say she's the breadwinner, she's taking care of her elderly parents or elderly people or people who are disabled, or she just doesn't make a lot of money, whatever the case may be, she's in a lot more of a vulnerable position to be sexually taken advantage of. You want those extra part-time hours? What are you going to do about it? Oh, well, I might have to cut some people from the team. It's recession. What you going to do to preserve your position? Like, it happens all the time. Wage theft as well. A rich woman would not be in a position where she has to bargain for her value in any economic exchange. She could say, this is my price, pay me, and she's getting paid. The average woman, the average working class woman, poor woman, she can't say, I want to be paid this amount of hour and then get paid that amount of hour. She's not in a position to bargain. She's not in a position to make her offer. All she can do is accept whatever is given to her. And oftentimes, because of that desperation, because of the lack of economic opportunities elsewhere, she's going to take anything that is given to her, even if it is below her worth. That's what I'm saying. Those are different realities. Those are different class consciousness. Y'all see how Irv Gotti is dragging Ashanti 20 years later off of using his power to make or break her music career by sexually coercing her. Now is using his predatory behavior as a flex, clout chasing, gossiping hen virality moment. Ashanti got the phantom pussy. 20 years later, still reminiscing. Now divorced, but wasn't then. And Ashanti was barely an adult then. Khalees and Pharrell. Pharrell, who fucked her over when she was 19 and selling her dreams of music stardom while stealing her masters and publishing. Power dynamics. I want y'all to see the power dynamics, not just in S&M, but also in the workplace, also in society. How these power dynamics shapes our class consciousness as well as our positionality within the hierarchy of society. Y'all remember Rick Ross saying, if he signs a female artist, he has to fuck her. Male artists aren't being told that now. Allegedly, I heard some people got to do some strange things to get signed to those 360 deals. But on the surface, outside of that homophobia and that, DL living, men don't have to pressure other men sexually to get signed. But Rick Ross said out of his own, you ain't even know it. Put a molly in her drink, she ain't even know it. I took her home, enjoy that thing, she don't even know. This fat fuck tea breast milk sweaty nasty motherfucker told y'all, if you want to be signed to him, if you want to see your dreams come true, he's going to have to use your body as a glory hole. As a businessman, as if his ass can't get motherfucking sued, as if his ass can't be on the sexual offender list. Said that with his chest out because he's that brazen about it, because he probably has tried it multiple times before. As predatory as the industry is, that is one thing that has not changed. You're going to be fucked out of your innocence, or you're going to be fucked out of your money, but you're going to be fucked out of some ting. And maybe that ting is your mental health, but some ting. The ownership of women's bodies, in particular poor women's bodies. The same reason why you don't tell your boss to shove it where the sun don't shine. Rent due on the 1st. Like literal rape victims don't have rape fantasies. That's a bourgeois woman's fantasy because to her, lust can be rapey and sexy, while an actual rape victim thinks nothing is lusty and sexy about sexual oppression. Anti-blackness is global. Murad used to be a performer on OnlyFans, selling feet kink material and engaging in race play. But of course, he was master and spewing words such as monkey to refer to black people. Murad is of Southeast Asian descent, and anti blackness is heavy there too. Even places that don't have an indigenous black population somehow, some way have developed anti-blackness in ways they've never had it, that vitriol for imperialism or white supremacy. In many cultures, referring to black people as monkeys in these 2022 times is a common racial slur. How does literally being dehumanized a kink? The world of Black Woman Vibes will never know. Murad, now known as the gossip blogger that covers Black culture, his past is coming back for him in a major way. Personally, I always thought Murad was doing too much. That's when I was interested in celebrity gossip. He also comes off as wanting to be desirable, especially when he'd add random shirtless flex pictures or videos to the end of his videos to get people to follow him on social media. So I was put off then. His subscribers grew, and now they're finding out they are just clicks and views for AdSense and memberships. I'm not surprised. Y'all didn't think it was suspect a straight young man rather cover Black tea blog with a heavy dosage of sister gal. Y'all don't at least do a lipstick alley search before becoming stans? And now y'all look crazy, especially the swirler divestment Black women types who say anything non-Black is good enough. Preaching this nonsense like character doesn't factor in to young women. And when these women find out that Brad can be toxic too, they're dead. Like the hottie little mommy who went on that high value date with that white man and ended up dead. But the cops didn't think her death was worth investigating. That nonsensical, unresolved trauma shit is gonna get y'all got each and every Black scent time. Y'all hyped up Murad and now found out that he's the biggest wolf of them all. So that is my conclusion. That is my diagnosis as I am looking at this, waning gibbous moon. That y'all gonna be heartbroken. Y'all gonna get in your feelings, but y'all still gonna subscribe because y'all like to be entertained. Y'all like to be in that gossip space. And y'all gonna act like it wasn't that big of a deal. I mean, if that's your prerogative, that's your prerogative. I mean, it says a lot about y'all. I mean, that's just some Summer Walker type shit. Fourth baby mama just to get pregnant the second time and cry about it. Like, I don't know what that is about, but y'all should see therapy for that. You shouldn't want someone to tell you that they don't fuck with you twice. I think them saying it once is good enough. But that's a self-esteem issue, and that's not really my issue. So y'all let me know what you think in the comments down below. But the topic that I am super duper 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 uber to talk about is actually rent control. Now, I have been participating in a local organization, City Life, that focuses on rent control, that focuses on keeping tenants in their homes, as well as supporting small landlords to gain victories and to be able to keep communities intact, as well as being able to fully be supported in providing shelter for people, like upkeeping their properties and whatnot. So there was a People's Assembly that I went to today, and honestly, it felt like one of the best things that I've done in a very long time. Not only because of the pandemic and everything that comes with exhaustion and social distancing and the world crumbling and, just deathless despair, or at least like nihilism. It was just nice to be in community, to feel the energy, to see the people and the different people of different ages, races, backgrounds, experiences, knowledge, skill sets, and so on and so forth. And it was just really, really good to see people coming together vested in a common interest and a common goal. And there was just different organizations, people who are engaged in land trust, people who are trying to reclaim their communities, different people there for this one particular issue, which is rent control. As y'all know, if y'all have been members and followers of this channel, maybe not members because I don't have a membership, but followers of this channel, you probably know, because I've said it before, I am from Massachusetts. And Massachusetts is pretty freaking expensive, especially the metro, Boston, and surrounding areas. It's pretty fucking expensive. It's ridiculously expensive. Massachusetts is one of like the top 3, top 5 most expensive places. Behind Hawaii, I think it's Massachusetts. And if it's not Massachusetts, it's like California, that San Francisco area, LA area, but just in general, California, then Massachusetts. And if it's not that, then it's Hawaii, California, New York, then Massachusetts. But the point is, it's pretty freaking expensive to live here. And people don't know, but once upon a time, Massachusetts actually indeed had rent control. And long story short, not to get too caught up in the weeds, when Massachusetts had rent control, obviously kept communities intact, that a lot of people were able to afford to live and thrive within the city because you could actually afford to live there. So all your money was going to rent. It was going to your savings. It was going to college funds. It was going to whatever the hell you feel like it, because you had the money to either save, to burn, to whatever, but you wasn't paying it all towards rent. That was the point. In 1994, rent control was revoked, and it was a planned attack by the real estate companies and large landlords because they wanted to jack up the prices, in particular in 3 cities. Those cities that had rent control back in before 1994 were Cambridge, Brookline, and Boston. And big real estate and big landlord came together and hopped on the propaganda, the same propaganda that the Bill Clinton administration, because they were in power at the time, were pushing, that welfare queen, not doing their part, taking advantage of the government, having all of these super predator babies. They were very much coasting on that classist, racist, sexist stereotype. And people who were not from the Boston, Brookline, Cambridge community, the state of Massachusetts was able to vote if those communities were to still be able to have rent control. So they brought up big real estate and big landlord co-signing and colluding together, put that on a ballot for Massachusetts residents to vote on. And they voted. It wasn't even a dramatic win. It was literally like 49-51. And they voted, people in Massachusetts, but not in those 3 specific locations, to revoke rent control because they were being propagandized, and they outspent local tenants and local people who were benefiting from rent control. They outspent them 10-1 in ads depicting rent control as something bad. The overwhelming majority of people from Brookline, Cambridge, and Boston voted to keep rent control. So they wanted rent control. They saw the benefit of rent control. They had no problem with rent control. It was the other communities that said, well, according to this propaganda, I don't want no welfare queen living high off the hog off of my hard work. So no, let's revoke it. And now, about 30 years later, people are now feeling the crunch of unregulated free market. And guess what? People want some type of form of rent control because they realized paying 75% of their check to rent makes no goddamn sense, right? So the same people who were propagandized to believe in those classist, racist, sexist stereotypes are now feeling themselves being squeezed out of every last penny to pay rent, right? Gentrification, and now those who were gentrifying have found themselves being gentrified too, right? So within this particular discussion, the People's Ascendant, it was so engaging, and it didn't feel long because it was actually quite a couple of hours, and it was from 10 to 2, but it ran a little late, and it started a little late as well. But it was so engagement. It was a communicative. It was an energy of love, respect, power, engagement. And truth be told, I could have went to those meetings like every other weekend. I don't want to force it to be like every weekend because I don't know, but I could do like every other week or once a month because it was just so that inspiring and motivational, and it lets you know that you are not going through this alone. Of course, everybody in Massachusetts is saying like this shit is too expensive. People are in their 30s and 40s still roommating it because it's so fucking expensive here. People are not able to buy homes. People are not able to have children. People are not able to forward themselves in their lives, to progress in their lives, to develop and grow in their lives because they are spending every last freaking dime on rent. So being in that space, being in that energy, learning other community issues, learning how to, like one particular organization, Reclaim Roxbury, they were there learning the issues of development, learning the issues of what's going on in the community, learning, environmental racism, how that's affecting a lot of people. Starting on the 19th are going to be disenfranchised when the Orange Line goes out of service for 30 days from August 19th until 30 days from then. That's going to impact a lot of people from different cities. The Orange Line goes through Boston. It goes through Somerville. It goes through Malden. Like, those are different cities, and people use public transportation here. Like, I'm not sure what the numbers are, but it's a lot. It's a lot. Rush hour, everybody's sitting on top of each other. It's packed. It's a lot of hustle and bustle, goddammit. A lot of movement. And you're telling me a major line like the Orange Line is feeling to be closed for 30 days? That means y'all feeling to get docked. That means y'all feeling to be late. That means y'all feeling to get fired. That means it's a major inconvenience, and it makes the commute longer, which also means there's going to be a lot more buses on the streets on top of traffic that already exists. And then on top of that, the environmental hazardness of all this exhaust fumes ripping and running for 30 days, polluting the air, creating asthma and other medical side effects, because the MBTA, those who are in charge of it, were just refused to just rebuild again. Like, the MBTA is dusty. There's always some issue. There's always some train that got to go out of service. There's always some type of delay. There's always some type of shuttle and reconstruction. It ain't shit. Rebuild it. Gives us high-speed rails. Upgrade the infrastructure. But when it comes to the MBTA, all they really do is put band-aids upon band-aids upon band-aids. Even when there's crashes, even when people die, like, they just don't do what they're supposed to do. Because what they're supposed to do will, yes, inconvenience a lot of people, but if they strategically planned and invested, then in the long run, it will benefit for the short-term inconvenience. But what they rather do is keep on putting band-aids on a bullet wound until, I don't know, the whole infrastructure, the red line, the blue line, the purple line, the orange line, on the silver line, all the lines goddamn collapse. Is that the agenda? Is that the plan? Because it seems to be that's what's happening, or at least that seems to be the most likely outcome than anything that looks like an actual systemic fix from the root to the tooth. So that's another issue that's going to impact people. So in these meetings with an engagement, what I have learned is that there are bigger issues that are nuanced and intertwined with the issue of rent control and bringing rent control back, that we also have to fight simultaneously. And as a collective, we can. As a collective, we don't all have to have the same experience. We don't all have to have the same skill set, but we have to have the desire, the willpower, and the consistency to keep on pushing for these particular wins. And it is like a month, and it is going to take time. It's going to take efforts. It's going to take strategy. It's going to take a lot of things, but we have to do it because there's no other choice. I mean, like, there's only so many fucking techies who live in motherfucking Massachusetts, in particular, the Boston metro area. There's so many motherfucking doctors. There's so many white collared people, high wage earners that you could squeeze for the life of them to get every last penny. What happens when the tech nerd can't afford to live here? What happens when the engineer can't afford to live here? What happens when the doctor can't afford to live here? There's only so much money you can put on a motherfucking apartment. What next? $10,000 a month for an apartment? Like, get the fuck out of here. Like, what? So with this resurgence of rent control and people enthusiastic, and we're seeing this across the board, not just poor people, but we're seeing this across the board, people of different classes, different experiences, different, like, this is too expensive. The rent's too goddamn high. It's too high. I'm spending all my free time at work just for an apartment that I'm sharing with other people. This makes no goddamn sense. So the revitalized energy into bringing some type of rent control is rejudging, so to speak, as well as, though the mission is to bring rent control back to Boston, but the overall goal is not just Boston, it's Massachusetts in general. And truth be told, this issue of rent control and this issue of affordable housing is a big, 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 big monster. And truth be told, I would want rent control nationally, not just Massachusetts, nationally. But I know all states do not have the resources like Massachusetts, as well as the issue of housing people should be a federal issue, should be public housing built by the federal government. And that's going to take federal money. That's going to have to bring back out the money printer so it can go brrr, so we can have what we need to build these homes. The problem is the government is not invested in such dealings because they profit handsomely from doing business dealings and giving certain contracts to developers and big real estate. But with that people power, we can make mountains move, and that's what we want. We want the federal government to guarantee us proper housing, like the federal government should be guaranteeing us universal health care. These are very, 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 very basic fundamental shit. To me, it's the equivalent of the sky is blue, the grass is green, water's wet. And truth be told, even looking at it from a Western imperialist point of view, we are the most backwards of them all. Europe already has some form of universal health care. So does Canada. And it may not cover everything, but it sure as hell covers more than what currently goes for health care in the United States. Insurance ain't up the ass. Medications are actually affordable and they're not luxuries. They're not charging you $500 a month for 3 pills. So even from a point of view of that jingoistic manifest destiny, we are imperialists, we are America number one. When it comes to other countries who are on the same wavelength, the French, the German, the British, they far ahead of the game when it comes to that basic human needs. And when I say basic human needs, I literally mean basic human needs. We ain't talking about every human being needs to have a car. Every human need needs to have a gold bar. Every human need needs to be dripped out on good. The basics, bitch. Every human being should have access. And not only access, but like, you want water? Here you go. And it should be clean. It should be drinkable. Boom. Basic. Every human should be able to sleep with a roof over their heads. Basic. It don't gotta be a mansion. Don't gotta be a condo. Don't gotta be a lakefront view. It just gotta be a healthy, sustainable, safe home. Roof over your head. Basics. Even when it comes to psychology. not Carl Jung. That's another little baby. That's not who I'm trying to reference. someone else. And I fuss with Carl Jung heavy, but that's not what I meant to say. I meant to say Maslow's hierarchy of needs factors in shelter. That's like level number one. Safety, shelter, like that's literally the base of the pyramid. Step one. And the fact that we have to fight for it tooth and nail should show you that your government don't rock with you the way that you think it rocks with you. Like your politicians don't really fuck with you like you think they fuck with you. Like you not really number one like that when your basic needs are luxuries. And that's a way to keep the population in control. Not to get conspiracy theory on your ass, not to get tin hattie on your ass, but think about it. If we gotta beg and plead and put ourselves in compromising positions, overworked, underpaid, wage theft, so we can keep a bullshit ass job because it's attached to medical benefits, then you ain't never gonna go past securing that bullshit ass job because it's attached to so many other needs and securities. So you ain't never gonna rock the boat even if the boat is exploiting your ass. We can never talk about other leftist things such as proper education, such as breaking down these walls of bigotries and all the other isms. How can you focus on that when you don't even got food for today? You can't focus on abstract things or multi-layered nuanced theory and ideas when your basic needs cannot be secured. And that anxiety of always being on the edge of losing such stability, temporary stability. That's by design. So we can argue about culture war and if you team blue MAGA hat or red MAGA hat and this, that, and the third. All the while, middle class is getting poor. The poor is becoming abject poor and the wealthy are just getting wealthier. During the pandemic, the middle class got bum rushed again. But somehow, some way, 100 people became billionaires. Meanwhile, the middle class has dropped a few notches below its former class. They are downwardly mobile than they are upwardly mobile. And the poor are just poor. Worse off poor. But let's argue about this dumb culture war shit because looking at our material conditions is just so hard. It's just so daunting. It's just so stressful. It makes you feel like a failure. It makes you feel like, oh, you didn't take life seriously. Personal accountability. Make the poor feel bad about being poor because it's you who didn't tell your boss you wanted to be paid $50 an hour. You need to take accountability for that. It's you who fired you. You need to take accountability for that. It's you who set the rent prices that you're paying rent for, that you can't afford. So you got to blame yourself. How can you blame the poor for being poor, essentially? How can we guilt trip? How can we manipulate? How can we gaslight the poor to accept being poor while the rich buy a super, super duper yacht? So now people are seeing that the jig is up, that this is just a farce. This is just greed and austerity. Now they're coming up with different tactics and with this rent control. Because it's interesting. Because I posted on Nextdoor. I was like, look, I'm feeling to have this little mini over here. Now, I mean, we're feeling to do the People's Assembly. This is what we're feeling to talk about. If you're passionate about rent control, like, you're more than welcome to come. If you can't, here's a Zoom link. Like, what up? Random ass neighborly, this good city that I live in, this good NIMBY, diversity, equity, inclusion, the good progressive buzzwords. This city that I live, democratic, liberal, the city that I live in. All the commenters were like, well, you don't know about rent control because you probably wasn't here for that. I was born in 92. I remember what my communities, plural, because I was one of those kids who had to move around often as a kid. I know what my communities look like pre-rent control versus after rent control. I also remember how communities used to look like, the actual inhabitants of those communities. That once rent control was out the window, so were they. Gentrification swept through neighborhoods, displaced people. People had to move every couple of years. So the idea of I didn't know was one of those, oh, come here, niggers. Let good old white daddy tell you what you need to know. And when I diffused all their talking points with legitimate facts, it became, oh, you're just being preposterous. Oh, you're being hyperbolic. Oh, this and that. And I was just like, all of this, neighbor, because you feel some type of way that poor people can actually live without being persecuted, without feeling dehumanized, without feeling like they're literal shit. You want me to sympathize with landlords who basically make their living off of being wealth extractors? They don't really provide any value. They extract wealth. They just collect rent checks. That's their job, to collect rent checks. They're not providing a service. They're just extracting wealth. But you want me to feel bad for them than people who are literally homeless. I'm seeing young people younger than me living on the streets with no other options. But yes, let me cry because you can't price a 1-bedroom, no specials, no pools, no granite tabletop, no oak wood, just a plain old 1-bedroom, no pizzazz, no nothing, for $3,000. Let me cry you tattooed tears because you can't charge $3,000 no more. So it just shows the greed of it all. And the complacency of thinking that, well, who cares if you can't start your life? Who cares if you have to stay in a violent relationship because you can't afford rent? Who cares that you are in a precarious situation where you are being exploited because you still got to pay rent? Like, who cares about all of these mental duresses and these mental illnesses and these anxieties and these stressors and these depressions? Because, like, I need 3 beach houses. Like, the fuck? I need to go to south of France. Like, the fuck? Like, I need to be in Louis Vuitton. Like, the fuck? Like, the fact that that is a bigger plight than the actual human suffering just shows me how rancid capitalism is. So, I will continue participating in these events. I will continue doing my part. And, I suggest y'all get involved too. I'm from, Massachusetts, so I do things locally. But y'all should get involved too, because, like, even the South that used to be known as cheap living, easy going, inexpensive. Now the South is getting expensive. Like, y'all getting heat waves, forest fires, the water is drying up, and y'all paying high rent. Ugh. What is that? So, yeah, let me read you some of the points that were made during the meeting. We can lift a ban on rent control in Massachusetts. Communities of color, immigrants, working families, we all deserve affordable, healthy housing. Renters, homeowners, and small landlords across the country are rising up and winning rent regulation. In Boston, real estate giants and their friends at the State House banned rent control 25 years ago. Rent and property taxes have spiraled out of control. No fucking cap. Going down memory lane for like 2 minutes. When I was in college, I did like a seasonal part-time job at a real estate company. And when I tell you that shit was like flipping crack, though I don't know that crack experience, I don't know what crack looked like in real life. I have no drug ties. But when I say like flipping crack, I mean like it was such easy money. Especially because in that location it was Commonwealth Ave. And if you know Boston, Commonwealth Ave, like that's hot shit property. So that's next to the universities. Like, it's just prime real estate. So they were packing in college kids, 3 to 4, in these like 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, turning the living rooms into a makeshift bedrooms. Like, they were just making boom coom money off of that shit, unregulated. It was crack money. It was just such a flip, and they were just dragging anybody with a post into the real estate company so they can get them into becoming a real estate agent, so they can get their commission, their actual business. They can get their commission off of the real estate agent, and then, gas up the real estate agent's head and be like, oh, you'll make this much money and da 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 da. But it was just very much of a quick flip. So yeah, big friends, big donors, and the rents are goddamn high. Pushing families and whole communities out of our city. We need to place limits on big corporate greed in order to protect our neighborhood. Right to the city. And I totally agree. And there was also, which I love so much when it comes to being in community, the thoughtfulness, the different language interpretations, the nuance of the conversation. Like, oftentimes when big development, they come in, or there's a issue with the property and there's people of different cultures speak different languages, sometimes the legalese seems so daunting, you just feel like you're not going to win, you got to give up. But in these spaces, we could talk about making it so that within policy, within contract, you got to break down these conversations so it could be tangible, so it could be understandable, so it could be commoners understanding. So it could be more equitable and more fair when it comes to tenants who want to defend themselves, who want to hold these landlords accountable. They don't feel like they will face retribution, or they will be retaliated against, or, they'll be pushed out. Like, tenants need to know that they have rights, and not only know that they have rights, but they are supported in the process. So there was that. Let me see. Let me show you, or not show y'all, but actually say it to y'all. A few other talking points as well that I totally agree with. One, what about the small owner? They really get hurt under rent control. So this is a common talking point about why rent control shouldn't be reestablished. Like, oh, what about the small landlords? Woo-dee-woo-dee-woo. And the thing about it is, a lot of these folks who cry, small landlord, I'm a small landlord, I'll be affected. They say they small landlords, but they own 30 plus properties. I was in one of these meetings that the city was hosting via the Michelle Wu administration. She's the mayor of Boston. She was having these Zoom rent stabilization meetings for anybody who wanted to participate. And there was one person on the call. This was the landlords calling to talk about why they were against rent control. And one landlord lady was like, oh, I'm a small landlord, I own 30 properties. I was like, if you don't get the out of here, what you mean you a small landlord? Get the out of here. And I was just baffled, because it's like Karenism. It's little white tears. It's literal why are you picking on me? I'm so rich. I'm so privileged. Why can't I just dominate you? Why can't I just take advantage of you? Why can't I just exploit you? Why are you making it hard for me to oppress you? It's just bitch, are you crazy? They're crazy. And this is the response. We say, rent control is not meant to hurt small owners. Past rent control systems in Massachusetts exempted owner-occupied 2 to 3 family buildings. That means some 75 to 80% of all owners in Boston are exempt. Rent control targets real estate corporations and large owners, maximizing profits at the expense of tenants. So, essentially, when they hit you with that bullshit, who's going to affect small Homeowners, first of all, you got to figure out what they mean by small, because small is like 3. Small to them might be 50. So you got to define what the fuck they talking about when they say small. And then you hit them with this fact that, no, rent control primarily affected big real estate. If you truly are a small property owner, meaning you own 2 to 3 buildings, you're good. Now, if you own 15, you was always good. So therefore, that rent control needs to be motherfucking tagged. Or else, where does it stop? You're gonna own whole fucking cities like Blackstone, own whole motherfucking blocks, and then charging top dollar, and they're just siphoning, extracting until these people literally have nothing, but you own everything. Not just the properties, but the stores, the grocery, the hospital, the gas station. And what monopoly hellscape is that? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Another point, they say, if there is rent control, I won't have any incentive to keep my property fixed. We say rent control is designed to give rent increases for increased expenses, just not for increased profits. Rising water bills are not why landlords double the rent. That is for profit. With rent control, tenants will feel safer calling inspectional services to make sure their properties are up to code. Exactly. You don't get to be a shitty ass landlord and then turn around and be like, oh, if you want me to be a better landlord and fix some shit up here, like this is motherfucking Bookman from motherfucking Good Times. I should pay you to be a decent landlord. So you gonna gaslight me, you gonna manipulate me, you gonna coerce me, you gonna twist my arm to be like, hey, if you actually want gas, if you actually want hot water, if you actually want electricity, if you actually want heat, then bitch, I gotta double up the rent. What you mean? In what world? In what? If you getting bullied and punked to do something, when you do it, does the bully stop being a fucking bully? Is that how that works? Of course not. Of course not. And the arrogance of it all to be like, well, I need to be able to double the rent just so I can do the most basic of things. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound familiar? You gotta jump through hoops and perform for the most basic of things. Sounds like the lack of healthcare, the lack of universal childcare. To have you on a perpetual hamster wheel, I always have to have your basic needs in front of you like a carrot on a stick. How else am I going to guarantee that you're going to keep on running for capitalism? Peep game.
It's actually verifiable that we, the working class today, work harder than serfs. Serfs from feudal era Europe, literal slaves, a class of slaves. We today, the working class, work harder than a particular class of slaves historically. Do you understand the ravenousness of capitalism?
They say if you have rent control, new construction will be discouraged. We need to build more. We say right now, luxury new construction drives up rents in the surrounding areas. With rent control, that would not happen to the same degree. New construction will still happen, but rent control may make it less expensive and will protect surrounding rents so that the impact from new construction is not felt the way it is now. That's gentrification. We all know when there's a new Whole Foods, when there's a yoga place, when there's a green smoothie bar, shit's about to get really expensive. People are going to have to find them a new zip code to live. We know that. So rent control would prevent that. So they can create big real estate, big developers. They can create whatever the fuck they want to create, but it would not affect the surrounding rents. That's why big real estate and big landlords oftentimes collude together to go against policies such as this. And when they are extracting the wealth from us, they're using our money and rent money to use it against us so we won't get rent control. So that $2,500 that we were spending on rent, that $2,800 we were spending on rent, that $3,500 that we were spending on rent, that money is now going into why rent control should not be reinstated. That money is going into why healthcare, universal healthcare shouldn't exist. That money is going into why universal childcare shouldn't exist. That money that you're paying into the system, into rent, is now going to be used against you to keep you on that hamster wheel. That's by design. But if there was rent control, they couldn't, big real estate couldn't price gouge, as well as the other surrounding areas wouldn't feel the need to compete with big real estate because they would know they can't do that, and there's no incentive to do that.
At this people's assembly, there was a landlady, an elderly landlady, who said that in her neighborhood that is historically black and historically impoverished, that she does not feel comfortable raising up the tenants' rent because she mostly rents out to people within her family, people that she knows intimately, and she knows the income that they're bringing in, and they won't be able to afford what the other prices within the surrounding area. So she was like, I can't charge them higher rent because they can't afford it. And when it comes to the state of Massachusetts, when she fills out her taxes, they keep her money because they punish her for not raising her prices. They're raising up the water, they're raising up the property taxes, and they are punishing small landlords for not getting into the hot flip, for not getting into the hot hustle of price gouging the working class tenants. It's by design.
The left hand washes the right hand, and they both wash each other. Big real estate is creating these quote unquote luxury buildings that stay empty because people ain't got that type of money to spend on a goddamn temporary box that they're renting. But the other surrounding available units, available property feel like, well, if big real estate gets to charge this amount of money for their luxury building, then we get to do it too. That's why they support each other, off of the exploitation of the working class and the poor class in particular. And all that diversity, equity, inclusion shit, statistically speaking, black women are more likely to be displaced and evicted. Not because it's uniquely a black woman issue as opposed to a pay wage gap issue, as opposed to a lack of financial security, a lack of generational wealth, doing these jobs that don't pay us a livable wage. So when shit gets hairy, like a lockdown or like long haul COVID or like shit, life just happens, the job is no longer available, or the job is cutting back on hours, or whatever the case may be, she finds herself evicted. Because that's the country that we currently live in Massachusetts in particular. Without the safety net of rent control, the likelihood of evictions and displacements is in a high reality position for most black women. The next one, my investments create real estate value and build the economy. Without my investment, the area deteriorates. We say it is the investment of thousands of ordinary people that create real estate value. People work together to decrease crimes and violence. They work together to create new parks. Public tax money is used to create new T-stops, clean up the harbor. All this creates real estate value, but the people who did the work and paid the taxes are getting evicted as well. And on top of that, like I said, it is wealth extraction. Like when the real estate companies and these developers take all this money out of the pockets of the tenants, that's less money that the tenants are spending in their communities. Can't go shopping, can't go grocery shopping, can't go to the movies, like all these other businesses that depend on their community members for survival. they're feeling the economic crunch too. Because if all my money is going towards rent, guess what? It's not going towards anything else in the community, because I'm going to value a roof over my head than some trinkets, than some material object. And even if I really, really like that material object, because like homelessness and like not wanting to be homeless far exceeds my priorities than whatever little gadget. So it's not only affecting tenants, but it's actually affecting the thriving, the survival, the pulse, the blood force of the community, because the money is like stuck. It's like a clog within the sink. It is stuck in the hands of the landlord's class. And that's by design. We say, yes, but new housing for who? Who support construction of new affordable housing? Building new luxury housing drives people out of surrounding neighborhoods. Rent control stops the bleeding. It goes to scale immediately, protecting our residents. If combined with other measures like TOPA and a transfer fee, rent control will set the stage for buying buildings and creating new affordable housing, as well as on top of who are they building these new properties for, which is never the poor, the working class. Part of these reconstructions and these buildings of new homes, they never factor in, what about that warehouse that no one's using? What about that old decrepit mansion from 2,000 years ago that looks beat up? What if we put money into that? What if we got material supplies to rebuild and refurbish that? What would that look like? People are interested in living in a co-op. They're interested in living an alternative lifestyle. Let's see if we can purchase this land. Let's see if we can refurbish this property and see if there's some type of exchange, how they can bring value into the community, how they can bring value into this mutual exchange. Those are not conversations being had. It's conversations about how do we put more money into rich people's pockets. Because trust and believe me, the people who got the contracts to create these developments are rich. The people who are buying these properties are rich. So they're saying, create more inventory for me, and then maybe I'll see if I'll do something for you. Create more inventory, create more supplies for me, and then maybe, thoughts and prayers, wish upon a star, I might give you like $100 discount rent. Is that the best we could do? I think not. So that is just some points I wanted to add in to the conversation about rent control. Again, this will be an ongoing conversation for the foreseeable future. And I really, the ultimate goal is not just to get this like, oh, it's just a Boston situation. I want Cambridge to be involved. I want Somerville to be involved. I want Arlington to be involved. Hell, I want those places that I ain't never even heard of, ain't never been to until I watch like the news report, the weather report. I'm like, oh, that's a place. Oh, that's somewhere in rural central Mass, Western Mass. Oh, that's somewhere in the North Shore. Oh, that's the South. I want all of Massachusetts to be out here talking about rent control. I want everybody to be out here talking about rent control. I want this to be a particular cause where it's like all for one or none for all. It has to be a situation like that where all these movers and shakers, these power players, these politicians feel the heat because everybody is talking about rent control, because we understand rent control would not be a victory for some, it would be a victory for all. In particular, the working class, the poor class, those who are already paying too much goddamn money on rent currently. So I just watched the clock. I just hopped over onto the hour and 30-minute mark. I didn't think it was gonna be this long. I always say that, and I feel like everybody always say that, and then it turns out to be super long. But like, I always do actually mean it. It just, I'm a talker apparently. But I'm gonna leave it here. I talked about everything that I want to talk about. I knocked everything out the park. Check out the information that I said, especially if you are on the orange line or you take the orange line. If that's really gonna affect you, there is going to be a gathering of a discussion about like how to get involved, what we want, you know, how to get our voices heard. And I'll put that information, everything that you'll need to know about rent control, the People's Assembly, right to the city, and everything else about me in the description box down below. So check that out. And yeah, if you want to follow me on social media, if you just can't get enough of me, you can find me on Twitter, BlackWomanVibes. You could also find me on Facebook, BlackWomanVibes, but I'm not there either. But like, it's there, but like, I'm not. So like, that's the thing. That also applies to Instagram too. I'm really just active on Twitter and sometimes on YouTube when I'm in the mood. And I do have some other videos and topics that I want to like get to editing and uploading, but it's also like time, space. What is that like? So yeah, we'll still see with that. But like I said, everything that you'll need to know will be down in the description box down below. But thank you for sticking it down and sticking it through with me. Unfortunately, I could not get the live thing together, and I was very heartbroken about that. Like, I had a whole vibe going, like I was ready for it, I was excited, I even hopped out and plugged in the goddamn microphone and everything, and it just, I don't know, it just wasn't working. I mean, the Aquarius moon happened on Thursday, so I guess Aquarius is the air sign. It's very techy, it's very mind thinking thoughts and all that stuff, and it is the house of collective, so maybe it just wasn't in the cards for me. But regardless of whatever you need to get from this discussion, hopefully you got it and caught it. But I'll leave you all here. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, drop your comments down below, and I shall see you in the next video. Peace.